Auschwitz, a place that must not be forgotten, in the heart of Europe, in a region that today lies within the borders of Poland. One of the darkest systems in human history was established. This place was Auschwitz. Auschwitz was one of the largest concentration camp complexes created by Nazi Germany. But it was not merely a camp. It was also one of the central sites of forced labor, systematic violence, and industrial-scale mass murder. The camp complex consisted of three main sections: Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II, Birkenau, and Auschwitz III. Prisoners were held, exploited, and killed in all of these camps. Birkenau, in particular, functioned for many years as a direct killing center. Auschwitz was established in the Upper Silesia region, close to the pre-war German-Polish border, approximately 60 kilometers west of Krakow. After the occupation of Poland in 1939, the region was annexed by Nazi Germany. SS officers constructed the three main camps near the small town of Auschwitz. The first camp opened in May 1940. The others became operational in 1942. The complex was administered by different branches of the Nazi SS over time. It came entirely under the control of the SS Economic and Administrative Main Office. All central administration was carried out from Auschwitz I. Auschwitz I was the first camp to be established. Construction began in abandoned Polish army barracks. The camp was rapidly expanded, with this expansion carried out through forced labor by prisoners. Within the first year, approximately 40 square kilometers of surrounding land were cleared and reserved exclusively for camp use. The first prisoners were Germans transferred from the Sachsenhausen camp and political prisoners rounded up from various parts of Poland. The camp's purpose was clear: to imprison enemies of the Nazi regime indefinitely, exploit them through forced labor, and physically eliminate those deemed unnecessary. In line with this objective, gas chambers and crematoria were built in Auschwitz I. The first gas chamber was installed in the basement of Block 11. Later, larger and more permanent structures were put into operation. The camp also became a center for inhumane medical experiments. In particular, forced sterilization, hypothermia experiments, and surgical procedures were carried out on infants, twins, dwarves, and women in Block 10. Between these blocks stood the Black Wall, where thousands of people were executed by firing squad. In 1941, construction began on Auschwitz to Birkenau. This camp quickly became the largest and deadliest part of the complex. Areas surrounded by electrified barbed wire were divided into sections for women, men, and families. Birkenau's primary function, however, was the systematic extermination of Europe's Jews. In the autumn of 1941, Zyklon B gas was used for mass murder at Auschwitz for the first time. Once this method was deemed effective, gas chambers were expanded throughout the complex. Initially, farm buildings were converted into temporary gas chambers. By 1943, four large crematoria had been constructed. These facilities contained undressing rooms, large gas chambers, and furnaces that operated continuously. From 1942 onward, trains from nearly all over Europe transported people to Auschwitz. Hundreds of thousands of Jews were deported from Poland, France, the Netherlands, Greece, Belgium, Slovakia, and especially Hungary. In 1944 alone, 426,000 Jews were deported from Hungary to Auschwitz. Upon arrival, SS officers subjected the deportees to a process called selection. Those deemed fit for labor were sent into the camp. The vast majority were sent directly to the gas chambers. The gas chambers were disguised as showers. People were told they were going to bathe, and their belongings were confiscated. These possessions were sorted in warehouses known as Kanada. Within minutes, the gas was released, and smoke continuously poured from the crematorium chimneys. At least 960,000 Jews were murdered at Auschwitz. In addition, tens of thousands of Poles, Roma, Soviet prisoners of war, and people of many other nationalities also lost their lives there. On October 7, 1944, an uprising broke out in Birkenau. Prisoners who realized they were being taken to the crematoria used explosives to set one of the buildings on fire. The revolt was quickly suppressed. Jewish women who had helped smuggle the explosives were publicly executed in January 1945. Auschwitz functioned primarily as a forced labor camp. Prisoners were made to work in factories producing synthetic rubber and fuel for the German war industry. Hunger, disease, and violence were part of everyday life. Prisoners who became too weak to work were sent back to Birkenau and killed. With a total of 39 sub-camps, The complex became a vast network of exploitation and death. Prisoners were forced to work in mines, quarries, agricultural fields, and weapons factories. Those no longer capable of labor were regularly selected for extermination. In January 1945, as Soviet forces approached, SS officers began evacuating the camps. Approximately 60,000 prisoners were forced to march westward in freezing temperatures. These marches became known as the death marches. Tens of thousands were shot, starved, or froze to death along the way. When Soviet troops entered Auschwitz on January 27, 1945, only about 7,000 sick and dying prisoners remained. Between 1940 and 1945, approximately 1.3 million people were deported to Auschwitz. At least 1.1 million of them were systematically murdered. Auschwitz stands in history not as proof of how far humanity can advance, but of how far it can fall. And for this reason, Auschwitz must not be forgotten, because everything that is forgotten can happen again.